Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to ask you a question today. Who out there listening has a problem with acceptance? I know I do. Acceptance and not being able to change something that you know you can't change is something I think we all go through. And my guest today, who I've had on before because she's very good. She's a skilled therapist. She has a private practice and she is an expertise in a lot of modalities and she has to deal with these things a lot. And this is Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. Hi, Michelle. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back. So nice to see you.
So me too. And so what do you think about in fact, I think you do acceptance and commitment therapy, which is your whole brand called ACT. Tell us what that is, that approach.
It's a modality that was originally created. One of the founders is Stephen Hayes, and I had the absolute blessing to see him and train with him. But he is so incredibly dynamic. But it's really predicated in acceptance, and commitment, which is what it expresses. But a big part of it is also kind of couched in our values. So a lot of my work is definitely value based. And our values definitely are our foundation for effective decision making. So I actually dedicate a chapter in my book on values because I think it's such a core component of the work that I do and also that I teach people. It's
So,
so integral.
so when you say values, like to me, I think of values are instilled in you as a child by your parents. Do you think that's the case, or do you think it's not?
It's part of it. It's part of it. I always say that there are values that we acquire, there are values that we aspire, and there are values that are circumstantial. And that's how I break it up. So the ones that you just referenced are the ones that we acquire. And we acquire that from all different places, right? It's how we're socialized, it's how we're acculturated, it based on our family of origin, it based on our identity, and on and on and on. I could go on and on and on. Specifically with the values that we acquire, some of them are ones we inherit, so to speak, right? We may not feel it on the gut level, we may not connect to it, but we just kind of do it because it's something that we're used to, it's something we're familiar with, it's something that we think we should be doing, so to speak,
Yes,
right? So it is important, when you're doing your values assessment to understand, what type of value it is.
right.
So let's say wealth. I'll use just the value of wealth, right? Some people may, and actually, I'm working with somebody very interesting. I'm working with somebody right now. He's a young adult. Again, post-college. He has a fabulous finance job that he currently has, which is, making a lot of money and etc. However, the job is so incredibly, I would say, um, what's the word I would use? Detrimental to his health. I don't even know how else to say it, that
Yeah.
it's causing him to have literally physiological somatic symptoms that's stress related. And it's so prohibitive because it's wreaking havoc on his body and his life.
Yes.
Um, but when we talk about it, it is so obvious that a lot of the thoughts that come in his mind is, I should be doing this.
Yeah.
And, I must be doing this. And if I don't do this, there's this tremendous amount of anxiety that gets induced because of, again, it's even not even natural consequences. Because one of the things that came up as an example is, I won't be surrounded by my friend group, or I won't be accepted.
Ah,
And and it was so interesting. I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "You think that,
yes.
but you don't know that."
It,
So
yeah, it's
all
interesting that you're saying that because my mind is actually going in so many different directions because I'm thinking about growing up in my family that your value was based on the money you're bringing into the home. Okay. And my value that was what I felt was the need to do service. And I wanted to be a teacher. So that was a definite, difference there. And the other thing is, I had a podcast last year with a beautiful woman that was a model. And she actually was a model for QVC at one point at the height of her career. And they used her so much. She worked so many hours that she actually slept there.
Oh,
She
wow.
didn't even have time to go home. She would end up
Wow.
sleeping there. And she finally said, and she made a ton of money, but she finally had a breakdown. She had a breakdown. So that's what we're talking about here, you know. Um,
Well, this person that I just spoke of, I'm actually filling out paperwork for him to get a leave of absence from work and potentially leaving work altogether because
yeah,
it's so prohibitive. So there you go, right? Like what's driving him or what drove him to take the job to begin with and to go into that career path was these values that he acquired. But he recognizes, you know what he wanted to do his whole life? He wanted to be on a fishing boat. That's what he wanted to be doing.
well, I ended up doing what I wanted to do. It took a long time to get there, but I did, my career choice ended up being teaching people with disabilities how to live independently. Not an English teacher, which is what I first wanted to be at 17, but a very rewarding thing to do. No, it didn't pay a lot, but I loved my job. And I just want to see what you think of this one situation. I had a friend who she liked the social life. I live in Palm Beach, okay? And there's a lot of people here that kind of misrepresent themselves
Mhm.
and want to be identified with that Palm Beach type society, but they're really not. So she was very social. She had a lot of parties. She attended a lot of events. She had some people that were high in society as friends. And we also went to the same spiritual community, Unity of the Palm Beaches, which has a very um, broad meaning of what God is, and it's not religious, it's spiritual. Anyhow, long story short,
Yeah.
somebody in her social group belonged to, I'll just say it, Christ Fellowship was it's a very Christian-based church.
Mhm.
And she joined that church and she immediately cut off all of her friends that were non-religious and spiritual instead. And that to me is there you go, there's your value system, right? What the wanting the what would you say, attention or feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, our values, just in terms of defining what values are, because people also get confused about that, right? Values, again, there's no ending to values. In other words, if we have goals, right, which are different than goals, goals, there's an ending, right? You accomplish or you reach a goal.
Right,
Our values are continuous. We're
right,
always striving towards our values. They're a lot
exactly,
more general, right? There's also actions that we take on behalf of our values. So they're very action based. And we
right.
can stipulate what that is very specifically. And
Mhm.
just because we're not acting on behalf of our values doesn't X out the value. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's not important to us. We're just not exercising it in the moment, right?
Hmm.
The other piece of it is that there's no contingencies. We accomplish our values or we lean into them, right? Or we take action on behalf of them no matter what.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's a certain mindset and it's a certain direction you take in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
So my mindset and my direction has always been to help people, specifically women. Um, and when I got sober like 30 some years ago, I became a sponsor and I sponsored so many women, many,
Mhm.
many. And also with helping the disabled, that was, part of my achievement with sticking to what I wanted to do, to be helpful, to be of
Mhm.
service, I guess you'd say. And
Mhm.
like I do, I value that in me, that I still do that, And is
Yeah.
that correct? And that's my value, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like you said, service to others may be your value, right?
Yes.
Or kindness or thoughtfulness or yeah, whatever it is, you have to kind of really extrapolate what that value is.
Mhm.
Again, sometimes we get confused, what the specific value. Sometimes I'll ask questions that will lead somebody to formulaically describe what that is. But once you have that idea, so like for example, when I did my value cards, which was an exercise that I helped people with during my training, one of the formative values that came up was connection.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I never put it in that framework before. I never thought about it as connection because I love that word. It's so like kind of conjoining and right and community. So I am so cognizant now
me too.
that connection is so important to me. And like, so for example, if somebody says, "Oh, let's get together," right? And I'm so busy. I always have like, I could
Mhm.
literally, um, you know, not have a moment in the day to do anything because I'm just busy with so many things. So formatively, I used to say, "Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time," right? And then I used to wonder, why is it that, I don't know, that people are getting together and I'm not being asked? Well, they asked me 20 times and I said no every time. What do you want? Right? Like,
Yes.
so now when somebody asks me to get together, I don't respond that way anymore. I say to them, "You're important to me. I want to make the time. It's not good for me this month, but what about next month?
Yeah.
Or is it possible for you
Don't
to be
stop
flexible?"
asking. Yeah, don't stop
Yeah,
asking. Yeah, I
that's
understand that.
like you mean something to me. I want to connect to you. And I'll say that, I'll verbalize that, and it's so meaningful. And when I walk away from that kind of interaction, I feel so proud of myself because I am intentionally, purposefully doing something to lean into my value.
So let's talk about that in regards to self-awareness,
Mhm.
because I think there's people walking around that have no self-awareness. They have no clue. And, I think it's an important thing because it also leads to mindfulness, is my other topic with that. And you need those things if you are going to become the person that you aspire to be. So,
Mhm.
what do you see in your practice with self-awareness or lack of it?
Yeah. So, with all due respect, I don't like to use the word self-awareness.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because I think that's very hard to quantify.
Mm,
Okay. It's
mm,
either you have it or you don't have it. And I think that that's a myth. I don't think you could have or not have self-awareness, right? I
mhm.
think it has to do with our ability to be in our conscious awareness. I mean, I'm going to say that.
Okay.
I think there are things that get in the way of us being fully conscious.
Mhm.
Many of us are kind of stuck in our unconscious or our subconscious. And
Yes.
there's perfectly good, valid reasons for it, which we have to respect. Somebody who was maybe mistreated throughout their life, right? The coping skills that they developed and the adaptations they developed was to cut off, right? And
Yes.
disassociate, let's say, right? And cut off their emotions. Now, they needed that to survive. That was their coping mechanism. All the power to them, because if they didn't do that, guess what? They probably wouldn't be the person they are today. Okay. But we take that with us into our adult kind of years. And
Mhm.
that's when it could be maladaptive and it could be unproductive in terms of being the person we want to be.
Okay.
Right.
So,
'Cause it worked for us as kids, not so
yes.
much
Yes.
adults.
So
Right.
going with
Yeah.
that, let's get practical. So what self-discovery tools do you use that can help people with that situation?
Yeah. So, in terms of like you said, so I think what I'm speaking to is being in your conscious awareness, right? That's what we're really speaking to. The
Mhm.
best way and I'll give you another, I like to use examples because I feel like they stick a little bit better.
Oh,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, I was working with this young adult again yesterday, and I've been working with him for, quite a substantial amount of time. He's lovely. Like I adore him. I really do. He's lovely. He's absolutely lovely. So insightful, so incredibly in tune, and like just a kind, caring, considerate, lovely person. And one of the things that we were talking about is he is attempting to get into a more kind of intimate relationship. But what he finds is he gets confused. He doesn't know how he really feels about the other person. And then
Mm.
he finds that he gets bored. And then he questions whether he actually cares about the person or not. So the example that came up, which was so like adorable in some ways, is he was watching his favorite show. And this is a show that he loves, and he said to me, she called me and she insisted that we watch it together. but I have to tell you, there was a huge side of me that did not want to watch it with her. I wanted to watch it on my own. Does that mean I don't like her? Does that mean I didn't want to be with her? Does that mean that like I'm not into the relationship? Like he just jumped to
Yeah.
that conclusion.
Yeah.
And then he gets confused on whether he really is invested in the relationship or not. And I said, what did you do? He said, well, she insisted. I told her to come over. And actually, it was nice. It was nice to have her there. But there was still a side of me that like had a little bit of a yearning for me to be there watching it on my own. And I said, why do you think that was? Anyway, we explored. And I said to him, would it be a farce that you wanted to watch it on your own? Because it's like, that is like, again, territorial in some way. Like, this is my show
Yeah.
and I want the full experience. I don't want to have to like explain something to somebody. I don't want to have to be interrupted while I'm watching it or whatever. Right. I said, would that be a farce? He's like, no. I said, so would that be contingent on whether you like her or not, or that you appreciate being with her or not? He's like, no. So I said, it's more important not whether or not you enjoyed her company. It's tapping into why A, you're self-doubting, your feelings, and B, do you connect to your feelings? Do you feel it on a visceral level? Do you feel it on a somatic level when you actually have the feeling? And what we've discovered with him is he grew up with a brother who was older than him that had like severe challenges,
Mhm.
severe cognitive challenges. And what ended up happening, unfortunately, because of that, is his parents were so preoccupied with his brother all the time. And he also had to walk on eggshells, making sure he didn't upset him, or making sure he didn't get dysregulated, or making sure that he made sure he wasn't dysregulated,
Right.
that he didn't have a voice. He did
Mhm.
not have a voice. And whenever he would express himself or express his needs, guess what? His brother's needs came formatively.
So
So
that's
what
what he needs. That's something for himself. That's
Well,
what
so,
for.
so when he expressed his feelings, what would happen? They would be disregarded.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So what did he learn? He learned, why do I need to express my feelings? Because they don't get listened to anyway. Might as well just keep it to myself. Right?
Mhm.
What's the point? Because it's not a good thing to express myself because then I just get disappointed and frustrated.
So
Right? If I
instead,
keep
you get a resentment, right?
Yes,
You
yes,
don't
anger.
you don't express your feelings and the other person doesn't get aware of it, you get a resentment.
Well,
That's
even when he did express himself, that's the thing.
of
And again, the parents, again, were in a tight spot, right? And for
course.
whatever, obviously they were in a very tough position just with the challenges that they were experiencing. But the point is that he never connected the mind body.
Right.
So what he does, literally, and it's fascinating to observe him, it's all up here. He's a very cerebral person. He's
Exactly.
all up here. So he perseverates and he overthinks and he self-doubts and,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So he said to me, how do I do that? How do I connect to my body? I don't know how to do that. I said, it's going to take a lot of learning. You have to rewire
Right.
the nervous system. You have to rewire the cognition because it is so used to being here. And when he's talking to me, it was so fascinating. As we're talking, right? I'm trying to get him into his body and he keeps asking a question, going
Uh,
back here. And then I'm getting him into his body and he keeps going and I keep pointing it out to him. I'm like, oh, you just did it again. You're going back in your head. And he started laughing. He was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I
so
said,
how do
ah,
you get him unstuck? Obviously, he is stuck in a behavior and he has to get unstuck, which the first thing, of course, I would suggest to him, but I don't know if he's ready, would be meditation. But I don't know if he could do meditation.
anyone, by the way, anyone could do meditation.
I
So
know. I
just
know.
say, okay, it depends on what type of meditation.
Exactly.
There's so many different types of meditation.
Exactly.
But what we were doing, and I did a TED talk on how to again to circumventing emotional avoidance, right? Because that's what we do. We avoid emotions that are uncomfortable and are
Yes.
dangerous, quote
Yes.
unquote. So you have to do a very, very slow, okay, very slow practice, okay, that integrates the things that you're going to naturally avoid. Okay, so if you're not used to going into your body and it's threatening to do that, because again, in the past, when you did that, it didn't work out so well for you, so that you avoided doing that and learning to do that, it has to be very incremental. So I started out even in the session, and I said to him, like, let's sit here. Let's sit here. If you can, and if you feel comfortable enough, close your eyes. And I had him just sit there, and we did a body scan, for example. And he went from like the top of his head to, his feet, and really pinpointing each part of his body and seeing if anything kind of came up, right?
Mhm.
So very small integral steps. And then I said to him, so he gets quite frustrated at times, So
Yeah,
I said, you don't any emotion that comes up, you could use as a tool to get in touch with your body.
yeah. Well,
Be
yeah,
joy, it could be frustration, it could be exasperation, it could be love, it could be whatever it is.
exactly. Your body keeps the score. I believe that's a book title, actually.
Yes, it is. It
And
is.
it's true. And I know myself that what I have trained myself to do now is if I get upset by something, um, instead of like just trying to calm myself down, I sit with it for a minute and I analyze, okay, why are you upset? And what part of the body is upset? What's going on? It's my stomach and it's butterflies and I feel like this. And 9 times out of 10, I can pinpoint something, like fear of abandonment or being disrespected or whatever, because somebody didn't call me back or was late or forgot the appointment, things like that.
Those are attachment issues, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I had to work with. Now,
Yeah.
meditation, my mind goes all the time, constantly. And silent meditation right now for me is a goal. But I do well with guided meditation because then I can listen to the person and not my head. And
Mhm.
I have a support group I started for women that are, well, not just women, but caregivers. Most of them happen to be women taking care of their husbands, etc. And at the end of the meeting, I play a 5-minute guided meditation. And a lot of these women never did meditation of any kind. And they are just amazed at 5 minutes how relaxed they are at the end of the session, right? And
Yeah,
and that's all it takes is just putting something in your routine that you didn't have before, right? It's
absolutely.
commitment. Oh, let's talk about commitment. Your program, right? These people have to be committed. Um, they have to have a sense of commitment to do the things they have to do, the acceptance, the change. Do you kind of lay out a plan for them?
So it's interesting that so commitment, it's interesting. I'll use the example of exercising because I think it's a good one. People have this idea that they have to be committed to it in order to do it. That is absolutely untrue. We
Mhm.
don't exercise because we feel like doing it. Okay.
Right.
Initially, the tendency actually, you don't, and that goes to the word motivation, right? We use this word motivation, motivation, motivation. We could only exercise when we're motivated to do so. Absolutely the opposite. We get motivated because of exercising, because we want more of, again, the result of exercising, whether it's the endorphins, whether it's high energy, whether it's feeling more confident in your body, whether it's the change you see in your body, whatever the case is. That
Exactly.
is what motivates us.
Yeah.
But we typically do not start out being motivated to do anything for that
Yeah.
matter.
I gotta
No.
tell you, I got an iWatch. Forget with my iWatch. And I had gotten one for my husband first to try to get him to be motivated and he has Parkinson's and he just needs a little push. Well, when I got mine and I set all the goals, they say set a goal for how often you stand up, how often you move, how many steps you take. And this is the best motivator I ever had. I mean, it tells me time to stand up.
Mhm. Yeah.
'Cause I'd be at my computer for 8 hours if you let me. And
Uh-huh.
and that's the kind of, I mean, some people get coaches, lifestyle coaches, etc., to
Yeah.
motivate them. But yeah, I think it's very important that you realize, okay, you want to get better at exercising. So do it. If you don't do it for 3 more days, don't beat yourself up, right? Just do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. But the commitment, and by the way, for me, the C in my ACE method is compassion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the commitment is more in the ACT work that I do, which is the acceptance and commitment therapy. But
Yes.
I use the word compassion
Mhm.
because I think a very important part of what gets us to do like we're saying, is
Uh,
being self-compassionate.
Yes, because when people think of the word compassion, they right away think of being compassionate for other people, and
That's
they
right.
don't think about being self-compassionate.
Yes,
That
yes,
was a new thing for me too. I had
yeah.
to delve into that. So how
Yes.
do you show them how to be self-compassionate?
So we work, I say there's 5 ways of practicing self-compassion, and I use this acronym, which is We Rock, which is work with your inner critic, engage your friend voice, redirect, observe, and acknowledge and comfort.
Uh-huh.
And again, each chapter has a chock full of different, skills and tools. That's just like one example of an exercise that I do. But there's so many different exercises that I show that help you because, each part in the chapters and the parts, the acceptance, compassion, empowerment, the first part of the chapters talks about the barriers. What gets in the way of us being accepted, of acquiring acceptance? What gets in the way, right, of acquiring compassion, self-compassion, and what gets in the way of empowering ourselves?
Yeah,
Because there's so many barriers that we have to recognize. If we don't recognize the barriers, we're not going to commit to the practice. That's just the way it is.
it
So
is.
once you understand and you identify what that is, when you see a barrier coming your way, you could easily identify that so that you get back into your skills and tools.
Exactly. And I think one thing my minister, we call him a minister, even though we're not a religious organization, but he always talks about, 90% of the people in the world are in their head. They're always in their head. And it's not just about thoughts, and it's not just about emotions, and it's about sitting still and just
Mm-hmm.
feeling, like I was talking about my own reactions, feeling it, thinking about why are you feeling it, and then self-compassion yourself, because you just say, it's okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's as simple as that for me. Is that
Yes.
kind of where we're headed here with the
Yes.
self-compassion, right?
Yes. So self-compassion, we never learn to be self-compassionate. There's no prescriptive way that we learn that. And generally speaking, if you think about how we're acculturated in society and in the Western culture, is that do, right? Like always
Yes.
about, acquiring things, I mean, it's always about acquisition. It's always about performance, we're not taught to actually reflect on ourselves, to think about how we feel, how we think, how we feel about ourselves. And again, when we do think of ourselves, how are we referenced as being what? Arrogant, selfish, etc.
Mhm.
And this has actually happened to me. It's so interesting because this happened very recently where I was talking to a friend and I was talking about something that I was accomplishing and I was so proud of myself and I was so excited. And he said to me, toot, toot. And I go, what do you mean by that?
Oh, blow your own
Like,
horn.
he's like,
I
you're tooting
got
your own
that.
horn. Why do you feel the need to toot your own horn? And I stopped and I said to him, I said, that's actually not why I'm saying this right now. So he said, what do you mean? I said, I feel comfortable with you in our relationship that I'm sharing with you because I feel proud internally. And this is the way that I'm kind of connecting with you, not because I need anything from you. I don't need for you to say, good for you, you're great. No. I said,
Michelle, I heard that all the time growing up. I mean, if I came home and I was happy I got an A on a quiz, they'd say, oh, nothing like tooting your own horn. And this is my parents. And like with my children, I would say, that's great. Good for you. You need a treat. You need a reward. That's wonderful.
here's even a step more than that.
Tell
This
me.
is okay. How do you feel about your accomplishment?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
that's what I would say to a child.
Yes.
I would
Yes.
say, you got an A. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm showing my own reaction to it. How do you feel about it? That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wasn't allowed to do that as a child. So it
Yeah.
does make, when we talked about our core values and everything, that's how it's done. That's what happens. It gets
Well, but
implanted.
that's what allows a kid or a child or even an adult to
Mhm.
connect, right?
Right.
To connect to their
Yeah.
values and also to connect, right, to their confidence.
Yeah.
So then I'm teaching the child, and I do this with my kids, right? Then I'm teaching the child on their own to
Mm,
say to themselves, how do I feel about this accomplishment? And
yeah,
they could say to themselves, I feel so proud that I studied and I put effort and I got an A. And I know, and I could integrate
yeah,
that if I put effort into something, which is self-efficacy, that I will have positive results. And this is how I'm going to approach my life.
yeah, yeah. That's so important. I
Yeah.
actually had another thing that we're going to have to say for the next time
Okay.
because we really covered this pretty in depth, I think.
Uh-huh.
You have, let's see, you have a website, correct? Right.
Yes.
And what's on your website if we go there?
I have, so I'm a blogger for Psychology Today. So I have all my articles, all my blogs. Of course, you could also go on Psychology Today as well.
Mhm.
There's a link. I do you on YouTube. I do a weekly guided meditation every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock. I publish a new guided meditation on all different topics. And again, in my YouTube, there's a library of all my meditations.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and then on my website, I have a link to my books and any information that you need about me and the things that I'm doing. Yeah.
I do know about ACT, that book, right?
Well,
What other
that's
book? Go
well,
ahead.
so this is
Yeah,
my new
H.
book. Yeah,
Mm,
Ace Your Life. So it's Ace Your Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want.
yeah.
And it's dedicated, like I said, under acceptance, compassion, empowerment. What's new and exciting, which I'm so excited about, is that I am currently publishing an audiobook for my
Oh,
book. So
great.
I am right now, as we speak, this weekend, I hope to finish it, is I am recording and I'm doing it personally because I feel like I really want to connect to my audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I couldn't do that because I have problems with my throat, my vocal cords. I'm actually in speech therapy just so I can keep doing my podcast,
Oh,
seriously. Because the beginning of the year, I could barely talk.
wow.
It was terrible.
Oh,
But I had someone do my books for Audible, which
that's
is
amazing.
great. And they did like
Yeah.
a royalty share, so it didn't cost me anything. They just get half of the royalties, which you can't
That's great.
lose. But
Yeah.
yeah, look, we're going to talk some more. I want to talk about I won't even tell the audience what it is. Let them be surprised.
Okay.
We're going
I'm
to
game.
go we're going to go even deeper next time because there's
Um,
so much you can do proactively in your life to make yourself personally proud and bring you personal satisfaction. You don't need other people for that. And that's important. So,
Yeah.
so good that you came back and we're going to have you back again.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I would be happy to. Your pleasure to speak to.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. All
You
right, Michelle, you have a wonderful day. And
You too.
everybody, give yourself a pat on the back today for something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Bye bye.